We are obsessed with generations. Boomers ruined the economy. Millennials killed everything. Gen Z cannot look up from their phones. Every generation gets a story, a label, a moment in the cultural conversation. Except one, sandwiched right in the middle. Born between 1965 and 1980, there is an entire generation that barely gets mentioned. Generation X. They are your older coworker who gets everything done without making noise about it. Your parent who raised you but never needed the credit. The people who built the internet but barely have a social media presence themselves.
And here is what nobody wants to acknowledge. Their psychology might be the most fascinating and most misunderstood of any generation alive. Not because of what happened to them, because of what it made them. Today, we are going inside that psychology, the science behind it, the specific experiences that shaped it, and the paradox at the center of it that explains almost everything about the way they move through the world. By the end of this video, whether you are Gen X yourself or you know someone who is, you will understand something that was never fully said out loud. Welcome back. This is where we go deep into human psychology, the patterns, the science, the things most people never stop to examine. Subscribe if you are new. Let us get into it.
Let us start at the beginning, because to understand Generation X, you need to understand one specific moment. Picture this. It is 1978. You are 8 years old. The school bus drops you off at the end of your street. You walk to your front door, you reach into your jacket and pull out a key hanging from a shoelace around your neck, and you let yourself into an empty house. No parents, no babysitter, no way for anyone to check if you were okay. You pour some cereal. You turn on the TV, all 4 channels, and you wait. This was not a rare experience. This was standard for millions. A study published in the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry found that by 1984, approximately 7 million children between ages 5 and 13 were regularly unsupervised after school. 7 million.
That is not a handful of unusual cases. That is an entire generation learning at the age of 8 that nobody is coming to save you. Figure it out yourself. And that empty house rewired their brains in ways that are still visible today. It taught them that consequences are real and immediate. You could not text someone for permission. You could not Google the answer. You made a decision and you lived with what came next. When your parents finally showed up, discipline was not a discussion. It was not a feelings-focused family meeting. You stepped out of line and you paid for it right then. Psychologists call this a high contingency environment, where actions and outcomes are directly linked without buffer time. Your brain gets wired to think 2-3 steps ahead because it had to. That is why Generation X has this almost eerie ability to see problems coming before they hit. They are not pessimists. They are running constant simulations because that is how they survived.
But here is where it gets darker. Generation X grew up watching their parents preach one thing and do another. All that talk about commitment, loyalty, doing the right thing. Then divorce rates exploded through the 70s and 80s. They watched their fathers give 30 years to a company. 30 years! Only to get a pink slip during the next round of layoffs. Everyone told them, work hard, follow the rules, and life will work out. Then the rules changed right in front of them. So psychologists might call what happened next defensive pessimism. Gen X just calls it Tuesday. They hope for the best, sure, but they plan for the worst. Because in their lived experience, the worst shows up pretty regularly. This is not cynicism. This is pattern recognition, and it built something in them, a kind of emotional armor.
They cross their fingers for good things, but deep down, they expect the rug to get pulled out because that is what kept happening. That armor is also exactly why you barely see them on social media. Not because they do not understand technology. They built most of it. It is because they grew up when privacy was just normal. When you did something embarrassing as a teenager, maybe 10 people knew, maybe it came up at one party, but it did not live forever on the internet. No permanent record of every stupid thing you ever said or did. To Generation X, broadcasting your life online does not feel liberating. It feels dangerous, exposed, vulnerable. They learned early, the less people know about you, the safer you are. So they watch. They observe. They are always paying attention. They just do not participate in a way that leaves evidence. Despite all of this, the neglect, the broken promises, the constant mixed messages, Generation X developed one of the most remarkable work ethics of any generation. They do not talk about it. They do not post LinkedIn manifestos about hustle culture. They just show up and do the work. This was forged early through jobs that seem almost prehistoric now. Paper routes at 5 in the morning, where a 12-year-old was personally responsible for delivering news to hundreds of houses, bagging groceries, running registers at fast food places where you had to calculate change in your head when the machine went down.
These were not resume builders. They were raw, unfiltered introductions to adult responsibility at ages when most children today are still being walked to school. They watched their parents get destroyed by corporate America, so they never believed in company loyalty, but they are fiercely loyal to their own competence. They can't control whether they will get laid off. They learned that early, but they can control whether they are the last person anyone would want to let go. So they make themselves indispensable, quietly, without fanfare, without a single post about it.
And here is the paradox at the core of all of it. Generation X is simultaneously the most independent generation alive and the most quietly collaborative. They will never ask you for help. They have been solving their own problems since they were 8 years old, and they are not about to stop now. But if you need help, they show up. No drama, no social media post about what a good person they are. They just do it. This comes from forming deep friendships out of necessity when parents were absent. Your friends became your family because they had to, and that loyalty never left. Their relationship with authority follows the same logic.
They respect competence, not titles. If you have earned your position through actual skill and actual knowledge, they will follow you anywhere. But if you are just someone with a fancy job title who does not know what they are doing, zero patience. They question authority because they watched incompetent authority figures make catastrophic decisions their entire childhood. Watergate, Iran-Contra, the AIDS crisis handled with criminal negligence. They learned young. People in charge do not necessarily know what they are doing, and blind obedience is for people who have not been paying attention. Economically, Generation X got hit repeatedly. The oldest graduated into a recession. The middle ones got destroyed by the dot-com crash. The youngest came of age right as 2008 collapsed the economy. 2 full economic crises before 40. Both times, they rebuilt. Not with venture capital, with the same stubbornness that got them through an empty house at 10 years old. Research in the Journal of Adult Development shows that Gen Xers report significantly lower rates of seeking social support during stress. Not because they do not have people they could ask, because asking feels like admitting defeat. They will raise to handle things alone. And that programming runs deep. It makes them extraordinarily capable in a crisis. It also means they struggle with vulnerability, with letting people in, with saying out loud that they might need something. And here is the thing nobody ever says. They are tired. Not the dramatic kind of tired. Not the kind that makes the news. The 30-year kind. The kind that builds so gradually, you almost do not notice it until one day you realize you cannot remember the last time someone asked if you were okay and meant it before the next thing hit. Generation X might be the last generation that truly understands what it means to be alone with your thoughts, to be bored, to solve a problem without immediately reaching for your phone, shaped by a specific moment in history when the old world was dying, but the new one had not arrived yet. They are the bridge generation. And bridges do not get parades. Here is the truth. Generation X does not need your validation. They genuinely do not. They have been functioning without it since they were 8 years old, and they are not about to start requiring it now. But there is a difference between not needing something and not deserving it. They are not the loudest generation. They are not the most celebrated. They do not have the most cultural real estate. They are just there, doing the work, holding things together, expecting nothing in return. The coworker who quietly fixes the problem before anyone else realizes there was one. The parent who handled everything alone so the children never had to know how hard everything was. The person who showed up for everyone,
and never once asked anyone to show up for them.
And maybe that is the most Gen X thing of all. Not caring whether anyone notices, not needing the credit, just getting it done and moving on. The world is better for it. Even if nobody has said that to you in a while. Drop a comment. Are you Gen X? Or did you grow up watching someone who was? Tell me what landed. I read every single one. See you in the next one.